Morning, Breean Beggs. I will have a little bit more of an introduction for him later on in the service. I have no announcements this morning, so what I'd like to do is just now take a few moments to greet one another and be sure to say hello to someone new that you haven't met before. Thank you. We'll have more time for great conversation and coffee after the service. So what I would like to do now is we'll turn to from our informal greeting of one another to our formally begin our service by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalism, the symbol of our unity and solidarity, of our openness and inclusion, of our community, and may this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world, and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it has been found. The opening reflection this morning comes from Stephen Erickson. He says, "We humans do not understand compassion. In each moment of our lives, we betray it. We know its worth, yet in knowing, we then attach to it a value. We guard the giving of it, believing it must be earned. Compassion is priceless in the truest sense of the word. It must be given freely and in abundance."
Our first in-service hymn of the morning is number 134 in your gray hardback hymnals if you want to access those. It's called "Our World is One World." The words are also on the screen. Please rise as you're willing and able.
Fall.
We will now kindle our candles of care. Each time we gather as a congregation, there are always those who are with us in our minds and hearts and who we want to wrap in love and care. Let us share a moment in silence this morning, embracing others who are here and here in our hearts and minds this morning. You're welcome to say your names aloud as you are able. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering elsewhere in the world at this hour, we hold in our community of compassion. And we now move to our time of offering. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I played the flute in middle school, and it makes me want to maybe just try a little toot when I get home. So today I'm going to share a true story that was originally written by Isabella Hatkoff, Craig Hatkoff, and Dr. Paula Kahumbu. Our story took place almost 20 years ago on the east coast of the African country of Kenya. A terrifying storm called a tsunami left a baby hippo stranded on a reef. They called him Owen because that's the name of the man who rescued him. But he couldn't go back into the wild because he hadn't yet learned how to defend himself. And he couldn't join another hippo pod because they would think he's a danger to them and they might hurt him. So essentially, Owen had no home. And that's when Dr. Paula stepped up to help. She worked at an animal shelter about 50 miles down the coast, and they had a special area in their park that they thought Owen would really enjoy. There were tall trees and low bushes, and what a hippo likes most, a big, mucky, muddy pond. There was also a turtle who was 130 years old, but everyone knew he was basically an old curmudgeon who liked to keep to himself. Well, by the time Owen arrived at this shelter, he was very tired and weak. He was so tired and weak that when he was brought to his enclosure, he ran straight for this old turtle and hid behind him. This old turtle's name was Mzee. and he didn't like this very much. Why such strange behavior, you might ask? Well, baby hippos often hide behind their mothers if they're feeling scared or threatened. Owen had made Mazet his protector. Mazet wasn't too thrilled about this situation, but eventually the two became inseparable. They ate together, swam together, and even tickled each other. Most importantly, they trusted each other. Scientists have tried to figure out whether Owen saw Mazet as a mother, a father, or just a very good friend, but they haven't made any clear conclusions. What is clear is that Owen wasn't alone as he recovered from the trauma of being separated from his family and lost at sea. Thanks to his connection with an old curmudgeonly turtle, and thanks to the human helpers at the animal shelter, Owen finally had a place to call home again.
As we move into a time of meditation, why don't you find a comfortable position, put your feet on the floor, close your eyes if you wish. Take a deep breath in, and breathe out as you reflect on these words from Thomas Aquinas. Fear is such a powerful emotion for humans that when we allow it to take us over, it drives compassion right out of our hearts. For a reading today, I'm sharing the words of Sharon Salzberg, and this is from the December 2019 Touchstones Journal on Compassion. She says, "Compassion is the strength that arises out of seeing the true nature of suffering in the world. Compassion allows us to bear witness to that suffering, whether it is in ourselves or others, without fear. It allows us to name injustice without hesitation and to act strongly with all the skill at our disposal." you, Karen. That's very beautiful. So, at this time, I'd like to introduce Breean Beggs. He serves as the Spokane City Council President. For more than 20 years, he has effectively presented causes and cases to juries, appellate judges, mediators, community groups, and the media. Highlights of his work include substantial police reform in connection with the death of a mentally disabled janitor in Spokane, substantial national reform on oil pipeline safety and connection, that was in connection with the death of 3 children in the Olympic pipeline explosion, and multiple jail and criminal justice reform issues in Spokane County. He is currently leading efforts to increase housing units in Spokane, decrease homelessness and crime, and facilitate community conversations on equity and inclusion. Breean is married to another social change lawyer, Laurie Powers, and they parented 3 now grown together near Manito Park in Spokane. So please join me in welcoming Breean Beggs.
All right, so it's so great to be here. I've been here so many times, not as a preacher, but as part of conferences, worshiping here, coming to education, and it's just a great institution for the community. And in a lot of ways, what I have to share with you, you're going to be like, well, yeah, we get that. We're open and affirming, we're inclusive, all that. So I just want, the reason that I'm coming to talk to you about this, we all belong in Spokane, is not so much to convince you that we all belong in Spokane. I think you probably get it. But I'm coming because we need to figure out how to talk to our neighbors and the people out there. One of the things that I love to say about Spokane is that we are in play. Spokane is a microcosm of the entire nation. And unfortunately, if you know our community, we are quite a divided community. Whether you want to talk about county and city, south of the river, north of the river, racially, economically, socially, religiously, politically, we are very divided, and yet here we are together, living at this time and place. And that's why I love being here and frankly being in politics. And so today, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to have enough time to say everything that I want to say. So, warning, because I was hoping that we'll get through some thoughts and some contents and some things about thinking about the world, and also get to some actually specifics that are going on in city government. And I'm hoping maybe I can do both, but if it's a little unsatisfying on all those specifics, that's why. There's only so much time. But today I'm in campaign mode today, not for elective office. I'm in campaign to change the official City of Spokane motto. And you might be aware that the motto a few years ago was changed to Spokane, the city of choice. And when I think about that, I'm like, well, I don't really like that. It's not very inclusive to me. It's kind of dividing. It's kind of saying whatever your place in Spokane, whatever your economic place, where you live, what your life circumstance, what your health, that was kind of your choice. It's on you. It's not on the community to lift people up. It's on you. And so, as well intended as I'm sure that motto was, I find it kind of jarring. And so, after a couple years on council, we've really been diving into equity and inclusion. And last year, about this time, it kind of hit me that what if we change the motto of Spokane to, in Spokane, we all belong. In Spokane, we all belong. And to me, that is going to call us to justice and to action and to healing and to something called the beloved community, which I'm sure you've heard of if I'm looking at the demographics in this group. And it was popularized by the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., but it was actually originated by a philosopher, Josiah Royce, out of California. And when I was doing my research, I didn't realize Josiah Royce, but little Breean Beggs trivia. I spent 3 years at the Josiah Roy School in Oakland, California, named after him, and I had no idea he was such a progressive philosopher. They didn't talk about that there. But this idea of the beloved community is a response to the kingdom of God as set out in the Bible. And except it's supposed to be a pragmatic response, that we could actually do it. And then the beloved community, it's a community where all people share the wealth of the community. And poverty and racism and homelessness are simply not tolerated. It's the cultural norm not to tolerate them. That is the beloved community, and that is the idea that Dr. King had, that we could create that in this country, and we could create that in Spokane. And whether we create it all in one day or 1 week or just in our lifetime, it can be created. And so I am on a campaign, as I said, to get our motto changed in Spokane. So over the next year, look for that, and please weigh in with emails to your council members and anyone else to change the motto of Spokane. In Spokane, we all belong. Just feel that for a moment, what that feels like. It crosses so many divides. And the fundamental problem that we have, whether we're going to talk about homelessness or police reform or the environment or racism or sexism, whatever we're going to talk about, to me, the fundamental challenge is that we continue to other people. Sometimes we as individuals, other people, sometimes we as groups, and we certainly as institutions and the government, other people. And what we do is we conveniently exclude them from the circle of human concern. We don't have to worry about them because they are other, they are different. It lets us off the hook, and perhaps that's why we do it. Although we could spend a whole hour talking about all the reasons why people other people, I'm not going to focus on that so much today. I want to focus on what I think some responses are that are more curative, that can minimize the othering and create belonging and empowerment for people. And so today I'm inspired, and I would recommend to you the writings and speakings of University of California, Berkeley professor John Powell. And he is the director of its Othering and Belonging Institute. They have a whole institute dedicated to this idea of the problem of othering and the solution of belonging. And you can go online and get materials and hear him speak and read his books and things like that. But it's really grabbing me because the fundamental piece is that if you want to do social justice work in this community and you want to bring it together, the work we need to do is to expand this circle of human concern. We don't have to solve all the world's problems overnight, but every day and every week and every month and every year that we can expand who is in the circle of human concern, we are getting there. A recent example of this hit me. It was, I think, only 2 weeks ago. There was a fire not too far down 195, and people had to be evacuated out of their homes. And you might remember, we immediately set up shelter for those people. Immediately, it's like, yes, those people in the south in the Latah Valley, South Latah Valley, they are in the circle of human concern. They've been displaced by their houses, by a fire. It's not their fault. We need to give them shelter. And they immediately have shelter. And in my mind, I think to Camp Hope, which is in the east end of town, which the east end of town often isn't in the circle of human concern in general. But this particular place, where there are over 600 souls living, trying to live and trying to survive, they are not really in the circle of concern of our government, our institutions, or even the majority of people. They barely eke by, and actually they're pariahs, really. We're trying to figure out as a government, some people are trying to, I shouldn't say we as a government, because the government's a little divided on this, but parts of our government are trying to figure out how to get rid of them, how to throw them in jail. And even something as simple as a cooling tent during the triple-digit temperatures. That was deemed unacceptable, and the city government did what it could to prevent it. The city council, by the way, voted some money to pay for that tent. So as I said, we're a little divided about that. But I just think if you take that difference between South Latah Valley people and Camp Hope people and see who's in the circle of human concern and who is not, it makes the point. It shows up in lots of places, and lots of things that I'll get into in a moment. But when I'm looking at John Powell and what he has to say, there were a lot of things, and again, you can go to whole conferences and spend hours doing that. But one thing that he mentioned in a speech that I listened to that really struck me is something that I can do personally, and I think other people can as well. And he described that in South Africa, among the indigenous people, there is a traditional greeting when they see you. Instead of saying good morning or good afternoon, they say sabana. And sabana means, I see you. I see you. And in some ways, I've heard other speakers say, we see you. And when they say we mean the whole community. We mean the community of our ancestors. We see you. And we don't just see you, the physical being. We see your value. We see your needs, and we acknowledge them. And I was just thinking how critical that is. I mean, we, especially in groups like this, we can get pretty intellectual and come up with the solutions to housing and homelessness and the environment, and we could come up with them. But it comes down to, I see you. I'm responding to you as a human being. And so I'm working on that because it's not the importance of when I next see you around town, if I say Sabana, and if you weren't at this talk, what are you talking about? It's about my intent inside, that I am seeing you as a whole person, not as the person who's unkempt, carrying their backpack downtown, but I'm seeing you as the son or daughter that you are, as the father or mother that you are, as the community member, as the gifts that you have for our community, but also the needs that you have to fully engage and interact in our community. You need some housing, you need some food, you need access to medical care. And what can I do about it, or what can we do about it? And so, imagine for a moment how this mindset could impact our community and impact each other. And I know that you've already greeted each other, but just to do a little participation, I'd like to just try this out for a moment in a pretty safe space, because you probably know most of the people here. But I'm going to have you turn to somebody near you, and if there's someone near you who you don't know very well, even more importantly, and just look at them in the eyes and say, I see you. And you at home or streaming, either live or watching this, if there's someone near you, you can do it. And so if you could, if you're able, if you can stand, if you can't stand, sit. If you could just, again, pick someone and find them and say, look them in the eyes and say, I see you. So if you can do that, I'm going to do it with Gordon here. For a second. Sabana. I'll spell it here. Yeah. Good. Thank you. All right. Thanks for engaging with me on that. And that word Sabano is spelled S-A-W-U-B-O-N-A. But really, if you click in "I see you, South Africa," something like that, I'm sure that you will find it. So some of you might have read, David Brooks had a piece this week, again, kind of a pedestrian situation, where he was noting that on his subway train to work, everybody had headphones on and nobody was talking to each other. And he kind of explored that. And he brought up studies on two different subjects. One was, why is it that people don't talk to each other on the subway or the bus or the airplane or the grocery checkout line? And he said the reason, the studies show that people inaccurately estimate that it will be a bad experience. So people's brains tell them, this will be bad to say hello, that don't do it. It can only go worse. And so that's what our brains tell us. And I don't know why that is, but that is what our brains tell us. But they did other studies that when they forced people to do it, it was exactly the opposite. People had rewarding conversations. They felt happier. They felt more connected. They felt more knowledgeable. And I think that's true. I mean, we're not a public transportation community yet too much. But you spend that time every day. You have these people. It's the intersection of culture and all that otherness right on that bus, right on that subway, or on that airplane. That's where you have the opportunity to learn new ideas and get new experiences. And we intentionally cut ourselves off. And, you know, I'm far more extroverted than your average person. And you would think if anyone would talk to people on the bus or the subway or the airplane, it would be me. And I probably do more than average, but I was thinking about it, and I don't. I get on that airplane, and I'm just hoping the other person won't talk to me. I just need to do some work, something. But I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, that's not always the case. And I was flying back to Spokane not that long ago, and there was a young man on the plane sitting next to me, and he had a T-shirt on that said Whitworth University, and I went to Whitworth University, so of course I chatted him up because my brain said, oh, this will be a productive conversation. You know, Whitworth alums, they're good. And so we did have a great conversation, but it just struck me that in preparing, I'm like, how many other people have I sat next to that could have been just as engaging or interesting, or probably more engaging and interesting than that? And I thought of a time, though, in the last year that it really worked for me, this thing. Many of you know I had the challenge of going through cancer last year, and I had radiation treatment for 6 weeks, every weekday for 15 minutes. And they gather, if you hopefully haven't had the experience or know someone, but you go the same time every day to the same place. And so the people ahead of you and the people behind you are just kind of in this waiting room. And there is a bit of a cultural norm that we don't talk to people in medical waiting rooms. We just don't do that. But, you know, after a couple weeks, we started talking. And these are people, unfortunately, cancer is an equal opportunity foe, and these are people very different than me. But we got to know each other, and we all had a different story, and we all had a different disease and different things that were going on for us. But those interactions strengthened us. So going through the hardest of times, we were strengthened by just talking to each other, just including each other in our circle of human concern. So, part 2, I'm going to go super quick on, because I wanted to talk about a few things. So, homelessness. I just wanted to point out I've got some dichotomies here. So, I've been to Camp Hope, I've talked with people. I've talked with the people in the West Hills neighborhood, which this is technically in, who are very upset about the Quality Inn being turned into apartments for people who have been homeless. And what's interesting is the group that told me the loudest, you don't care about me, you want us to be sexually assaulted, you want our property to be invaded, you want our everything bad to happen to us, you do not care, City Council. It wasn't the people at Camp Hope who actually have those. It was the neighbors. They were more passionate than the people about Camp Hope about being excluded from the circle of human concern. They took it quite hard that they felt that way. And it just led me to believe and understand that no matter if I figured out what the solutions are and who needs to accept and just step up, if everyone feels excluded sometime. And at the same issue, before I left that, I just wanted to mention on homelessness, a couple of our you know what, I'm not going to do the strategies. I don't have time to do that. But I wanted to do the same dichotomy on police reform. So again, I've marched in the Black Lives Matter marches. I've been a civil rights lawyer for many years, so I'm very attuned to people of color and how they have been mistreated by our institutions, and particularly police departments over hundreds of years at the start of their history, essentially being set up to enforce slavery laws. And so I wasn't prepared when I was engaged with police on these issues that they were feeling othered as well. I literally saw police officers in uniform with tears running down their cheeks about feeling othered by the rest of society. And if you want to get to the core and figure out a resolution of what we're going through right now, we have to be able to deal with both of those sides of the dichotomy. Even though to me, my brain tells me that the people who don't have guns and don't have power and have been oppressed, documented, they have a better case for being othered. But the police are still feeling othered. And we're not going to get anywhere until we acknowledge that as well. And similar, the climate chaos that we face currently in our country. I read a little blip in the newspaper. 1,000 people died in Pakistan from monsoons. And that's just Pakistan. And I was struck by how many people are dying and suffering from climate chaos all around the world. And, we have some issues here a little bit, but not like it. And we're able to just dismiss it and other literally billions of people in the world and continue to live our daily lives as if their lives don't matter. We do that. And again, all the evidence is like, okay, we're othering all these people. And in Spokane, we have really, when we put our sustainability action plan together, we've really tried to make it cross-cultural and include all communities, and particularly those that are most impacted. But what I ran into in the middle of the development of that plan is there's a group of union workers who do work in the fossil fuel industry. And they are seeing their livelihood is just about to be cut off. And they feel completely othered. What happened? And it was just a challenge. And again, not something I had thought about. But when real life people and their livelihoods are coming to talk to me about how they're feeling othered, I have a heart like we all do. And it made it more complicated. But the thing that we did in our sustainability action plan is we said, you know what? You are right. Come to the table and let's figure out a sustainability action plan that includes you, that includes retraining at family wage jobs. Let's have you be part of the solution. You are actually experts on power transmission. How can we make this system work? How can we get the electric grid that we want to depend on to work better? And suddenly I was working, and it's a remarkable alliance, and I don't think you've seen it many places. And in Spokane, unlike almost any place else I know of, we have an alliance and agreement with our private utility, the labor unions, the community activists, all together, working together for a sustainable Spokane. And I'm over my time, so I will just go to my closing, which is please join me in the campaign for a new motto in Spokane, we all belong. And if you can and are able, join me in manifesting that truth in Spokane, that we all belong. And join me in recognizing that I am sometimes othering people, and I need to be aware of that and check myself on that. And more importantly, look for ways that I can empower people who have been othered and help them feel a sense of belonging. And together, we can create more of that beloved community in our lifetimes in Spokane and beyond. Thank you so much.
We're going to close with a hymn that I've always loved, and this is why. It's 298, Wake Now My Senses, And it's fairly quickly sung. There are 5 verses, but I didn't want to omit any of them because each verse is a specific about who we are and what we can do in the world. So I would really invite you to rise and sing with me, "Wake Now My Senses." Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being it all. Keep with the web of creation your power. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the truth. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Love for the limit and praise the sublime. Wake now compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the whole sky. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
As we close today, I want to share these closing thoughts. We need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world. Rooted in determination to transcend selfishness, compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries. Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential to human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity. It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable to the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.